Welcome back to the Restaurant Technology Guys. Thank you, everyone out there, for joining us. As as some of you guys have noticed, we've also been doing video the last couple of episodes. So if you want to see the guests that are on the show, we've been posting them on YouTube and on LinkedIn Live as well. Today is these are some of my favorite types of episodes, and you guys have heard me say that because we've got a technology partner and an operator on the call, and so. I'm going to let our technology partner introduce themselves. Rob, why don't you let our audience out there know who you are and what you get to do for a living, and then we can introduce the guy that gets to be out in the field dealing with customers every day, implementing the technology that we're going to talk about.
That's great. Rob Ming, I'm the founder and CEO of Faster Lines. For over 13 years now, we've been watching cars and people in line and identifying delays and helping our operators that we work with actually utilize the data to reduce delays and move the line faster.
Okay, yeah. So you've been standing there for 13 years in the parking lot, like with a little clicker? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, exactly. No, we try to get rid of the stopwatch. That's the whole goal, right? Get the stopwatch out of the district manager and the site manager's hands and actually do a video analytic that has some machine learning and some AI built in so that we can actually keep track of those things, identify those delays. We work with the operator to figure out kind of what they want their cadence to be, how quickly cars should move, and then help them operate with the data as well.
Wonderful. I obviously was teasing. Standing there with a stopwatch and or with a clicker is probably not what everybody's looking to listen in for. So, and you were able to get one of your clients on the phone with us here on the recording today. Ben, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, and then we can talk a little bit about how you guys met and what your experience has been with the Faster Lines guys.
My name's Ben Little. I'm a Zaxby's franchisee. I have 13 stores here in greater Raleigh, North Carolina. We'll have 2 more by the end of the year, so 15 total. I have the number 1 store in the Zaxby's franchise as far as sales, and we have quite a few others in the top 50. So that's kind of where Rob comes in as he's trying to help us stay at number 1 and get the rest of my stores up, hopefully into the top 10.
I love it. For those that are unfamiliar with Zaxby's, which even though I'm in the restaurant space, I recently moved to Texas over the last couple of years, so I've gotten more introduced to Zaxby's, and there happens to be one on the way to my mother-in-law's house, so I happen to eat at that one
Awesome.
in Keller, Texas, often. And she does as well because, helping her with some of her budget management. I'm like, why are you at Zaxby's 3 times a week, Grandma? But different conversation. For those that are unfamiliar with what the Zaxby's brand is, would you mind educating our audience, because it is primarily in the South, I think, at this point still, as you guys are continuing to grow.
Yeah, mainly southeastern United States. We've got, I think, 920 stores in the brand now. We're Chicken QSR, kind of our closest peers is Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's, which they're kind of the gold standard of any franchise model, any quick service restaurant, and especially our discussion today of going fast and cranking as many cars to the drive-thru as possible. They're the 2 gold standards, and who everyone's chasing, and including us. So that's kind of what we do, and we just try and sell a lot of chicken.
I love it, and I would concur that those gold standards are certainly there. We were just at the National Restaurant Association show, and it was, how do I get my drive-thru to operate like Chick-fil-A? I'm like, First you write a check for a lot of money, and then we can start to figure it out. And people are like, well, I don't want to write a check for a lot of money. Just make me like them. I'm like, well, they've done a lot of work to get there. So. You guys met. You guys have been business partners for some time. Who wants to take kind of how you guys met and how you guys got introduced to each other?
I'll let Ben do that.
I'll go off. So to kind of lay the foundation of the conversation, like I said, Chick-fil-A has set a very high standard, and we're all just kind of trying to chase them, and kind of for a brief history of drive-through times and throughputs. Really, the technology has had little to no advancement for a very long time. I don't even know how long, but a very long time. And so we started noticing Chick-fil-A put in these doors that there's usually only two companies that do it, Tormax or Asa Abloy. So we decided we were going to try and copy what Chick-fil-A was doing. So we threw the doors in a couple locations. So, and just to be clear for the audience, these are the doors where it's like gigantic sliding glass doors where, you know, people are physically walking in and out. And you can, in theory, deliver food to multiple cars at the same time. So we threw a couple in, and you know, sales were up a lot. So we're like, oh, great, we're geniuses. You know, it's all because of the door. And in the process of that, we figured out it broke our loop timer. So the loop timer is that little thing that sits in the concrete in front of your drive-through window, which is the extremely archaic way that our industry has measured speed of service for forever. So that's when we started to really try and figure out, is this door working or is it not? And I didn't have a good answer. So that's when I started poking around and stumbled across Rob and his group, and they have been trying to help me answer those questions now. So I kind of have the answers now. That some of the answers I wish I didn't have.
Yeah, because sometimes the technology only like highlights what you know your real business problem is. It's not has less to do with the tech, and sometimes it has to do with the systems, process, and people. You know, as it relates to that, I'm sure.
That's right.
So Jeremy, let me just baseline really quick. So we do it a little bit different than, for example, the magnetic loops.
Actually, before you jump into kind of what you guys do different, Rob, I was going to ask you, can you educate our audience? Because quite frankly, those that may not be in drive-through or are in a brand that might warrant drive-through at some point. And I know a few brands that have kind of looked to figure out drive-through. They may not even know what this magnetic loop timer means. So if you could educate everybody on what that is first, because I think it really will help set the foundation for how have people done it, to Ben's point, forever. They've always done it the same way, and it's this thing that goes underneath the concrete, but I'll let you talk about it because you're a lot more educated than I am on it. Then we can talk about how you guys have really turned it on its head and changed the way that people think about it.
Yeah, you bet. That's great. So for decades now, there's been magnetic loops where they have this thin piece of cable that's in the concrete. You do actually have to cut the concrete to put it in there so that the cars don't mess it up. And so that magnetic loop is basically identifying a large piece of metal, which is a car that drives over the top of it, and is saying, oh, there's a vehicle here now. Normally, magnetic loops are either set up in a single spot, like at the window, where they can identify one car at a time. And then other systems try to identify it maybe at the order speaker box. And then they're trying to keep track of how many cars are going through and match that up with the loop that's at the window, so that you can start to get an idea of when the order was placed and when the food was actually delivered when the car got out of there. And so that's been the standard. So when you see like the speed study report and you're looking at like 257 seconds or 384 seconds, that's usually the concept of that is from the order speaker box to when the food was actually given to you in the bag and you drive off. We do it a little different. We're not looking for service speed or total time of service, and we'll talk about why here in a second, but we're actually looking for what the flow should be. How often should cars move through, and how long should they be at the window? How long should they be at the order speaker box until they should actually move? Because when you break down that flow, it becomes easier to actually communicate with your team at the store and have them understand. It's really difficult for them to understand, okay, well, it's 257 seconds. And if we go over that and now it's 302 seconds, well, that's only 5 seconds different. Well, it's 5 seconds different against 3,000 cars, right? It's a huge number, but it's hard we found that it's really difficult for the team inside the store who's actually running in the kitchen, and assistant managers and sometimes even managers to kind of understand what that metric means. But when we break it down and we say, hey, a car sat for too long, longer than our time standard, 15 times over the last 30 minutes, they can understand that. They can go, oh, 15 times we didn't serve the customer to our time standard. That's an issue. We got to do better. We got to speed up. And so that's what we do. And that's what we help give Ben's team that knowledge at the locations.
Well, and I guess I'm going to turn to the operator real quick, Ben. And again, I as a consumer, and I've not run a drive-through. All of my previous restaurant experience before I came onto the tech side is in casual dining. So other than I did work at a sandwich shop, but they didn't have a drive-through, which really, I guess, oh, whatever it is. But talk to me a little bit about what that means from an operator perspective, because I've been in the drive-through. I've watched the clock and I've watched the staff get all freaked out. You're in the drive-through and they're rushing to get you your food. And talk to me about what that looks like from a management perspective, and why is that so critical, not just from the guest satisfaction, but really even ultimately your profitability, because you've got to staff that levels. And talk to me a little bit about how you think about that as it relates to speed of service, profitability, but then even really the customer service aspect of it, as you're starting to train, young staff members and educate them about those pieces.
Yeah, and we're probably gonna make this sound way simpler than it is, because like we'll just go faster, get more cars through. But it's really a multi-dimensional problem, and this is where Rob and his team have really helped us to understand, because first, if you want to go faster, you have to identify where your bottleneck is. And then you have to kind of keep bucketing the bottleneck from that point forward. So, like just as an example, like I have one store that has an $11 average check. I have another store that has an $18 average check. But, going back to the archaic way that we've always measured speed of service, I can't measure those stores apples to apples just on a 30,000 foot view, let alone drill into the details of where can each store individually get faster. Because if I'm just going off a window average time, there's all kinds of problems in the data there, to where, that $11 average check store, they pretty much only have one entree per car, so they should be able to naturally go faster than the $18 average check store that has two entrees per car. So this is when we started kind of having some light bulbs go off of, like, if we really, really, really want to measure apples to apples and be able to kind of take best practices from certain stores and apply them to other ones, we've got to drill this all the way down to the entree level. And Rob has helped us build super nerdy stats and dashboards to help us see this data, which, like, that's kind of the bigger picture of how we're trying to tackle the problem, and not just using like lazy averages, because like kind of the gold standard, which not for Chick-fil-A or Raising Cane's, but the standard QSR is a minute window time. That's kind of like the golden standard, because if you're doing a minute window time, that's 60 cars per hour, and then you can do the math from there. But that's a lazy way to do it, because you could be super slow when you needed to go fast during the peak times, but then if you're going fast during the slow day parts from like 2 to 5, well, the average may come out looking great, but you didn't do what you needed to do. And
but your number of transactions is significantly lower. Yeah, your sample size is lower. Just because I'm truly intrigued, and I want to talk about how Faster Lines has really helped with this, and how the process worked with you as an operator. And again, this is just my own lack of knowledge. Why, and maybe it's because of the old tech, why do so many drive-throughs do the food's not going to hit the time, so go park in this spot and I'll come bring it to you deal? Because that happens. That happened to me the other night. I was leaving the airport. It was like 10 or 10:30, and I ordered a burger at a brand that doesn't even matter what the brand is. But I got to the window, and the lady came up, and she looked at me, and I knew that because I got a special order burger. And I knew she was like, oh crap, I'm going to get myself in trouble. And so she asked me to go pull up, and then it feels somewhat inefficient to me, but clearly it's not, or most brands wouldn't do it. But help me understand that, just because I'm truly inquisitive, and then I want to talk more about Faster Lines, if you guys don't mind.
Well, we're all tied to the incentives that drive us. And the funny thing is that really speed of service is like a key business metric. I mean, really, even 5 years ago, I mean, it got measured, but like we really didn't incentivize it. We didn't really know what the times meant. and the list goes on and on. But now everyone has speed of service top of mind if you have a drive-through restaurant of any kind, and that if your management team is not incentivized to push that time as hard and as fast as they can every single day, it's just not going to happen. I mean, I don't care how well you staff. I don't care how great your GM is, whatever. If they're not incentivized to go fast, they're just not going to go fast. And
so what happens to that transaction? Like my transaction for my burger the other night, does that get thrown out of the averages so that they don't get penalized? So Ben doesn't come in and go, hey, Steve, GM, why didn't you get this order out? Is that what happens on that? Because it looks like I left with my food, but I really didn't.
That's correct.
Sorry, this is totally me just trying to understand, because again, I've not worked in drive-through, and I'm half the time I learn for myself. Why do they do these things? And I also happen to have a family of 6. And so when we go through the drive-through, they hate us. I mean, their check averages are high, but they hate us because we never hit the freaking numbers. I promise you that.
Well, Jeremy, to defend them for 1 second.
Okay.
So one of the variables in drive-throughs is queue length. So when I say queue length, that's the number of cars that fit in your drive-through line.
Okay.
So, there are circumstances where pulling a car forward in front of the window is correct and does make sense. Now, if you're the only car in drive-through, then they're just cheating the system.
There was one car behind me, in fairness, in this circumstance, and it was 10:30 at night. But I think they probably just ordered a ice cream or something, so they probably wanted to get the ice cream out and get that guest out. And I ordered the burger that was a special order at 10:30 at night. They didn't have anything sitting waiting, but I'll let you keep going because they probably don't have it in their system that says go make sure you're going to have burgers waiting for people, because 10:30 at night, who's ordering burgers? But I had just flown for 3 hours back from Chicago, so
I understand. No, but I mean, yes, in that situation, they're kind of cheating the system, because again, that location is probably just going off a straight time average, and they don't want you messing up their average at the very end of the night. So they're kind of cheating it there. But lengthening the queue in one direction or the other is kind of at this point a pretty well-known best practice of, you can either lengthen it on the back end, kind of like famously Chick-fil-A does, and what we try to do with tablets and kind of mobile drive-through order takings. We're extending the queue back as far as we can go. And then you can also do that on the front end. You can pull 1, 2, hopefully not more than that, cars forward at the window side to extend the queue that way.
Yep.
So that's just one of the many variables of measuring speed of service that's really hard. And again, Rob has done a nice job of trying to help us better understand what is the optimal queue length, and how many cars should we pull forward, how many cars should we take the order behind the order point, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I want to dig into that, Rob. You were about to say something about my own personal experience in the last couple of weeks. And I apologize. I'm kind of geeking out because I like to learn, and I know our audience, when I talk with them, they're like, yeah, just keep asking questions, because it's really good for us to learn, because maybe they don't know these things, or they don't have the budget of a Zaxby's to be able to do some of these things that they don't understand. So, Rob, what were you going to share about my experience getting my cheeseburger the other night?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's all universal, right? Like we all deal with it all the time. Like everybody deals with it. And that's part of why it's so fun to geek out on this topic, because we all just live it all the time. And all of us have sat in that line and been totally frustrated, or all of us have pulled up and been like, yeah, pull forward. You're like, there's nobody behind me. Why pull forward? Just give me my food, right? Yeah. So, but the pull forward is important, right? It should be a relief valve. It should be a pressure relief valve. So when your normal customer comes through, you shouldn't need it. You should be on point. You should be able to hit your time standard and be able to make it move. But you get, Jeremy, your family, or a minivan full of hungry basketball players that are coming back from high school, practice, and you get a $50 order. Pull that car forward, right? That's a perfect opportunity to not mess up your flow. Make sure the rest of the customers are getting convenience. But so many times we just don't know how to communicate that with our team. They just don't know, and they don't know when to do it. And so then they're starting to game the system themselves, because they just know that they're trying to chase an artificial number. But when you actually start to understand flow, delay, and you're communicating expectation with your team, then you can actually start having conversations about, when do you pull a car forward? When does it make sense? Why are we doing it? Is my lot set up for it? There's some locations where you pull a car forward, it doesn't matter. There's no place for them to go. There's no place for the next customer to go. And even worse, how is the person getting from the kitchen with the food to the car that's waiting?
Yeah. That was the part that I was like, they don't even have a door. Like, this person needed to now walk. And I'm like, there's nobody behind me. This is the silliest thing. But that's, I don't want to say, besides the point. Rob, you and I talked when we were in preparation for this call that I guess I want to also throw at our audience and have you and Ben riff on it for a couple of minutes, which is the whole idea. Expectations from consumers end up getting hit. How they so Ben, you talked about going out into the parking lot. There's something different about, I see a whole line of cars in front of me and I haven't ordered yet, versus I've ordered and now there's 8 or 10 or 15 cars in front of me. I've ordered. I expect that when I hit the window, if there's 15 cars in front of me, for my food to be hot and ready. If there's only 2 cars in front of me, my expectations may change. Talk to me about that juxtaposition of consumers' expectations. And again, it feels like they were really, really kind for the couple of months during the beginning of COVID, and then everybody's expectations went through the roof in the wrong way. But there's some expectation that we have to live with, that the minute I order, I expect my food in a certain amount of time. And if I miss that expectation, you get a customer service problem. So talk to me a little bit about that operationalizing, because that's really where the data comes from. And then I want to dig into how Faster Lines is really helping with that.
So before Ben talks about in the restaurant, let's just go back a little bit and talk about the system. So it used to be that you're still looking at magnetic loops, right? Uh-huh. And so it used to be, you'd get a time when the person got to the order speaker box, and then you get a time when you're sitting at the window. Well, then we start doing this thing with tablets where the order speaker box doesn't matter anymore. So now that magnetic loop's not doing anything, right? Yep. The order's now being pushed 7, 8, 9, 12, 15 cars back with a tablet. And now it's a totally human process. Now there's people, and really, in order to make it work right, and we can get into this a little bit, but you got to be moving with the vehicle as much as possible. And so now it's a people thing and a movement thing and a process thing. And if you don't have any way of watching and seeing it and having some measurements around it, it can go bad really fast. It can get really crazy. And you can go from doing something that you think is fixing the system to something that's actually convoluting the system, confusing your customers, and slowing down the process. And Ben could talk.
I was just going to share it. I mean, but it's such a human thing, to your point. And I had a very similar experience at the beginning of COVID, and any of our longtime listeners have heard this story, where I walked into a brand, and it didn't happen to be drive-through, but it happened to be a counter service place where I could walk up to the counter and order. But the queue for the kitchen to prepare the food was extremely impacted because it was at the beginning of COVID and everything was coming in for a third party. When I see a line of cars, I recognize that there's going to be a wait, and I make a choice. When I don't see a line of cars, I don't necessarily always consciously make that choice, because I think, well, I'm the only one, because we're all very self-centered. We think I'm the only one. Why wouldn't I be the one that's here, and they're going to get my food for me as soon as I'm available? So Ben, you want to riff on that just for a couple of minutes, because that I'm sure you're having to manage, and your general managers and your shift managers are having to manage those expectations, because technology oftentimes can get the orders into the kitchen just as fast, but you might not be able to take payment, or you might not be able to get the food out as quickly as they might want.
Yeah, and then kind of going back to how Rob and I met was, again, we put all these fancy Tormex doors in, originally just 4 of my stores. Sales were up, 20%. We just think we're geniuses and we're moving the line so much faster. And then as we really started to dig into the data, we're like, well, maybe we're not geniuses. Maybe we actually got slower, and we just added dine-in sales back in, and we grew our digital sales. And so we were being fooled by our own data. Mm-hmm. And so as we started to dig into that, that's again kind of where Rob and then come into play is, like previously, if we changed something in the drive-through, I mean, we could make educated guesses, but we really didn't have any data or analytics behind, did this definitively work, and did we definitively get faster, and did we definitively get more cars through during our peak hours? Mm-hmm. And what we found originally with the Tormax doors was that was not the case. We actually got slower.
Yeah.
We
Interesting.
and we assumed the exact opposite.
Was it because of, I mean, I guess just, was it because of confusion with the guest of getting the right food to the right cars? Like, where did it get slower? Like, where was the sticking point? And again, Rob, it sounds like Rob helped you solve that, but probably something that you, without the data, you would have had a hard time ascertaining until somebody, so one of those obvious ones, when you see the data, you go, oh yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah.
Why did I not see that myself? Probably would be my guess.
It just added a layer of complexity that I don't think we fully came to appreciate until we saw just how much slower we had gotten in the drive-through.
Okay.
And we were trying to use it as kind of a one-step fix-all without really appreciating the need to fully separate payment from the window, which this is what Chick-fil-A has done better than anyone else is you never ever pay at the window at a Chick-fil-A ever.
That is the biggest sticking point. Everybody tells me in drive-through is that payment. And if I can move that closer to the order point, it's, I mean, at least a couple of customers that we have that compete with you. I mean, maybe not compete with you guys, but are in that space. They say it all the time. It's like, you know what, move it farther away from the window, because that's the biggest sticking point, is that, which is why even, some of the brands used to have the pay window and then the pickup window, because again, same idea is drive it back before the tablets got there. So,
and for, the Tormax, we would have the door and tablets, but we wouldn't have a payment station yet. And so when you had multiple people on tablets outside, extending the queue backwards, we still didn't. There was a lot of confusion at the window a lot of times, so it would just add lag time, and the orders would be out of sequence sometimes, and that would impact order accuracy. But the good part about it is you just increase the guest touch points is the biggest thing as far as the guest experience, because previously you're just talking to a faceless speaker, and then you see one person at the window, versus now you've got the initial touch point when you're ordering from a person on a tablet. Then we have the payment bucketed out into its own kind of outside payment station, so that's a second touch point and a second time to confirm the order. Then they get to the window, and it should just be, all right, Ben White Explorer, here you go.
Yep.
So it really, just kind of like I said on the front end, it helps to bucket everything out. It increases the touch points, and it should, in theory, increase your order accuracy as well, which we know that if you can go as fast as you want, but if you're not getting the order right, then you're going to hemorrhage guests. And that sounds obvious, but it's not obvious. It really isn't.
Well, I said it to a couple of customers this past week. Like I said, I was at the NRA show and talking to some of our executives, some of the clients that we work with. They said 70% of their guest complaints come from order accuracy problems. And as more and more stuff is going out the door in bags, and some of these are even table service restaurants or restaurants that may not have a drive-through, and you guys live the drive-through world yourselves. But if 70% of your problems are related to order accuracy, that's a big challenge, because you end up getting guest retention. Rob, I know you've been patient. Talk to me about, what does faster lines do? Like, let's talk about what it is that you guys have taken a different approach to solving this same problem, because I think your guys' approach is very unique in that you don't just implement technology, you truly try and understand the business process and what it is that they're doing, because it could be a problem, as Ben alluded to, where it's a confusion issue, it's a staffing issue, it's a process issue, it's a space issue. Technology is just going to exacerbate that and help them have the tools, because data for data's sake is not valuable. Data that can help you make better business decisions is really where you guys focus. So why don't you give our listeners an overall overview of what you guys did to take a different approach to solving these problems, and then how you guys engage with clients to help them solve it for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate it, Jeremy. So first of all, we've been doing this a long time. We've been doing this for 13 years. We have a lot of new people that are coming into the space now with AI-enabled technology, trying to keep track of cars and trying to do some of the things we're doing with people inside as well. And what most people, and this is true of lots of technology projects in the retail space as well as in the restaurant space, a lot of folks bring in a solution and they say, here's your solution, good luck.
Yep.
And they expect the operator, or they expect the IT team to go and implement it, and then know how to use it, and then know how to make the data work for your organization, and then also know how to train your team on how to actually use the data. I was in technology for a long time before I started doing this, and what I know is that no team has time. We talk about speed of service because we're trying to save time for customers and also save time for our clients. It's about saving time for our clients.
Yep.
We implement this. I mean, Ben's team didn't have to do anything. We literally show up, we run the cables, we mount the box. The cool thing is that we've set this up pretty simply so we can be in and out of the location, usually about 2 hours, sometimes 3. And when we leave, we're actually collecting data. Like, we have real data at that point where we're watching the cars. We give a status quo. We actually start to measure, and we try to figure out what's the flow, what's actually happening now before we tell anybody anything, before we start telling the team about delays, what's actually happening. And then we sit down with a team like Ben, and he's got some great, operating partners and folks that are really invested in making sure each one of his locations is successful. And we sit down with people like that, and we say, okay, this is what we're seeing. This is what's actually happening. Is this what you expect? And then we find out, oh no, we're way below our time standard. We really want to be going faster. And then we start talking about what faster is and what expectation is. What is the kitchen capable of? What's possible here? Yeah. What is your operation set up to actually do? And then the really cool thing is that when we have a partner like Ben and we get to actually start to work on really neat projects, we start to talk about things like, oh, let's separate pay. And where do we put the payment? And order entry. Is the speaker box faster? Is the line busting with these tablets faster? Why is the line busting slowing us down? And we get to really start to dissect all these different processes. And at the end of the day, it's we talk about something specific, which is job function splitting, right? And so Ben's got a really specific example that he's working on now, which is in the expo area. And Expo, I'm gonna let him talk about it because he knows it better than I do.
Yeah, so Ben, talk to me a little bit about kind of your experience as a client as it relates to Rob and his team's process that they go through. Because I'm genuinely intrigued, and I watch technology projects succeed and kill it, and then I watch technology projects just ruin. People, like at the beginning of COVID, everybody was all excited about getting orders into the kitchen and loading all these digital ways to get orders in, and then they crashed and burned. And there's a couple brands that I won't go to anymore because of it, because it was such an awful experience. And yeah, again, it's change management that you're doing, and it's not just implementing technology to give you these. It's how do we change it? And then there's one other example that I'll tell you guys about, and this will really resonate with you guys. 20 years ago, I was working in the stadium industry, and I had worked at the stadium, and they were making every order that came in from their 10,000 seats to order. And I said, no. We are going to, and then the stadium happened to do the Super Bowl. And like the first year it crashed. We had tickets. They were running an hour and 20-minute ticket times. It was in-seat service. And again, this was 20 years ago. But I went in and to your point, Rob, I said, no, we're going to have hot dogs, and then we're going to have ketchup and mustard packages that are on the side. They were trying to make every ketchup and mustard on the hot dog. And I said, no, the beginning of your shift, you're going to have 40 Cokes here and 40, Sprites. And then you're going to just run this food to them as fast as you can get it out the door, and you're going to have somebody else. And they did the job splitting thing. But what would happen in the beginning when they first set this thing up, and you guys are going to laugh at this, they literally would take the order, they'd look at it, and somebody would put a hot dog in a bun, then they'd wrap it, then they put it on the tray, and then they'd go grab the French fries, then they'd go grab the nachos, and then they'd go grab the bag of peanuts, and then they'd pour the Coke, and then go bring it to them. And I'm like, no, this is not going to work. So, but it's funny because you think that, they ordered the food, I'm going to make it, and I'm going to bring it to them, but you can't do it at pace to be able to do that. And then the longer the queue gets, the more stressed out they get, and it ends up doing that. So
people fall apart, right?
So great illustration, long time ago, but it is kind of a funny story that I say to people. I'm like, no, we changed the process. We're still delivering the same product. We're delivering it faster, and we're delivering it hotter, and we're delivering it better because we changed the flow of the line. And job split and set people up to be successful. So Ben, talk to me a little bit about kind of what your guys' engagement with the team at Faster Lines look like, and how did it impact you guys? Because I'm guessing you guys were really successful before, just more successful once you guys got the technology into place.
we're always trying to get a little bit faster every day, and I'm
I love
sitting
it.
in our Goldsboro stores parking lot watching the line as we speak, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I mean, I think the best thing about Rob and his team is that they have been willing to customize the look and feel of the data to pretty much exactly what we ultimately envisioned it, and
Love
just
it.
getting it to where we can simply communicate a message to the GMs and the AMs and the shift leaders of here is what's causing your delays, here's how we fix the problem, here's the data that shows it. And you know, previously, you know, again, we were just relying on old loop timer data where we really just had to guess and make assumptions, and then when we changed something, you know, we may have felt like we were faster, but then the time didn't change. So then we didn't really know if it worked or not. And you know, then you're kind of just chasing your own tail to where, you know, now we have definitive analytics to say, all right, we tinkered with this. It helped a little bit, but maybe if we take it one step further, we can, you know, get 5 to 7 more seconds off of the window time, or, you know, we can get 10 less alerts from 12 to 1 or whatever it may be. And that's kind of one of the other things that I really liked about faster lines is that it's really kind of a reverse way to look at speed of service.
Yes.
And it makes it very, very customizable. You know, kind of like I've already mentioned multiple times, there are so many variables in store setup and you know, the parking lot and queue length and average check and all of these things. And each one of those variables changes the equation to what is going to be the bottleneck for that individual store. And so instead of saying, you know, well, sub 60 seconds, we're doing great, when really that store's true baseline should be like 45 seconds, or
Yeah.
maybe a store's true baseline should be like 110 means that they're killing
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the biggest, or one of the biggest light bulbs that went off, is like, why are we not measuring this store against itself, and why are we measuring it against other stores that may just have completely and utterly different setups? You know, like my oldest store we built in 2004, and I have my most recent one was built in 2018. I mean, they're completely different stores.
Yes.
They're completely different layouts. The queue
Different
link's different.
equipment
The
in the
drive,
kitchen.
yeah,
Yeah.
the kitchen setup's different, so on and so forth. So you're just being able to measure a store against itself is kind of one of the biggest takeaways we've had from Rob and his team. And so, you know, when they come in, they'll kind of set everything up, turn everything on, and just basically not tell anyone for about 2 weeks and collect baseline data. So then we kind of have, you know, true blind testing for the first 2 weeks, because we don't tell the GM or the AMs that we're doing it, kind of see where that store's true baseline is. Then we tell them about the program, and then we can really start tinkering and messing around with things and changing things and seeing exactly what works and what doesn't, and where we can not move the bottleneck, but hopefully alleviate the bottleneck. But
Solve it.
sometimes you do move the bottleneck somewhere else, and then, you know, you get to work on a new set of the problem.
So I'm going to ask you a quick question, Ben. What do you say to those operators out there that just say, just operate better? Because what happens at the end of the day, and you've been an operator for a while, and you're chuckling on video because you know, well, no, you don't understand. You just need better managers and you need better people, because that's what people say all day long. And I see you shaking your head on video. For the audio listeners, Ben and Rob are both shaking their head, but we've all heard it. We've all seen it. It's like, just operate better. You know that your ticket time should be 60 seconds. Just go be better. But with data and with digging into each of these things, to your point, 45 seconds for one store could be the same for 70 seconds for another store, based on volume, based on kitchen, based on guest check average, and across the board. So what would you say to that operator that's the long-time operator that sits around with a clipboard and just says, this is just what you need to do, manage better, get better people, and you'll hit your ticket times?
It's kind of like an anti-hustle culture strategy of, you know, like I want to be as lazy as possible. I want this program to tell me exactly where I need to make the changes and exactly what we need to do better. So I'm not playing whack-a-mole and just guessing and just, you know, telling my team members, go faster, go faster, go
I
faster.
love it.
because when people make that broad statement of like just hire better or just train them better or whatever crap, they're always just making the blind assumption that it's an effort problem. And I mean, I'm telling you, I've been in hundreds of shifts during a store where the effort is absolutely there. They're going as fast as they possibly can, but there's something slowing them down from reaching their peak throughput in those times and shifts. And if you don't have a guiding light or some kind of data analytics that you can point to and say, we made this change, this was the result, then you're just guessing. And I mean, guessing is a really bad business practice.
I love your idea of playing whack-a-mole. It's like,
that's right.
The hole's going to show up somewhere else because if you don't have the data to be able to do that. Rob, we're getting close to the end of our time. So why don't you talk to our audience out there? How do they get in touch with your team? What should they expect the engagement to look like if they get in touch with your team? Are you going to show up with your referee's jersey, with your stopwatch and you start doing that? Obviously that's not the case, but why don't you tell our listeners out there that have heard what Ben had to say and say, I need what Ben has. How do I get it in my restaurant?
Yeah, fasterlines.com. Fasterlines.com is the best way to get to us. There's a place right there to set up a meeting with me and my team to actually set up a proof of concept. We like to roll it out to a couple of sites. We don't want to do one site or two sites, usually 3, 4, even 10 sites at a time, because you're going to see things. You really need to talk to the multiple sites like Ben was talking about and see the difference between your mid operating site and your high operating site. And we're going to then do it for you. We're going to come in and we're actually going to implement for you. We're not going to ask your IT team any questions. We're literally, because we actually put our network in the box. We don't touch your network. We don't want to deal with pay card, PCI DSS, or any of that stuff. I know how difficult that is. We're going to put our sensors in. We're going to put them in the place where we need them so that we can see where the actual service is and where the bottleneck is. And then we're going to start collecting the data and we're going to tell you what's really happening. And the cool thing about our data is it's a trailing indicator of everything else that's going on in the store. We actually can see what's happening. And when you make those adjustments like Ben has, we can say, oh, yeah, that's working, or no, that's not working. Yeah. And then the best part about our data is we can say, oh, and by the way, go watch your video. You already have everybody who's listening here has video in their stores. There's just no place that doesn't have video in their stores. And we end up, for managers, for district managers, for regional folks, we give them a reason to go back and actually watch their video and see what was happening in the store that was the bottleneck.
Yep.
Let's go examine the process. Let's go see what was happening. Because like Ben said, it's almost never, occasionally it's training, but it's almost never training. It's almost never effort. There's usually teams that are trying to kill themselves to get to where they're trying to go. And they just need some help to actually adjust a process, do a job function split. And we can really help these organizations find out when are our hours that we should be actually investing in these locations. When should we put an extra person in? And that one extra person is going to help us serve 15, 20 extra customers in that hour. And that's the fun stuff, right? It's not about whipping the team. It's about making sure the schedule's right. It's about making sure that the resources are there, and then doing some process improvements so that you can actually make those adjustments that take a golden hour turned into a really golden hour. And you mentioned something before. You were talking about 70% of their complaints were accuracy. Customers complain about accuracy. Customers don't complain about speed. They just don't come back. They just don't. And so speed is the first part of convenience and customer service. And then, you're right. You have to get the order right. But those customers who get the order wrong, they're going to complain. The ones who just had a slow experience, they're just either not going to come back as often or they're just not going to come back at all. And so we want to make sure that we're moving the line and making sure that there's that speed that is customer service that keeps those people knowing you're convenient, builds brand trust, and gets them coming back over and over again to get your your chicken fingers and your fantastic sauces.
Yeah, I would concur with that statement of a father of four. when the drive-through experience is bad, man. Like especially when they were younger. Now I got 3 teenagers, so pray for me. But that's a different conversation at a different time because they're patient enough because they're always sitting on their stupid phones. But outside of that, and I've got one elementary age kid. But when they were younger, man, it had to be fast. So, Ben, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Somebody that's never experienced Zaxby's, they see Zaxby's, they're like, I need some food. What is the go-to, and then what is your go-to? Because every restaurant operator has some wonky way that they operate, and they make their own food with their own sauces. So I want you to give some Zaxby's gold out to our listeners out there, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I'm trying to eat healthier currently, because as you can imagine, I eat a disproportionate amount of fried chicken. But my current go-to is getting the grilled house salad, no toast, no cheese, with 1 packet of light vinaigrette and 1 cup of the buffalo garlic sauce, and putting the buffalo garlic on top of the grilled chicken, and it's very good, very good.
Okay, yeah, that sounds way healthier than I'm going to eat this afternoon. I promise you that.
But if you don't want to eat healthy, I've always thought that our kickin' chicken is just the best thing that we have on the menu. It's 3 chicken fingers between 2 pieces of big old Texas toast, our tongue torch hot sauce, ranch, and crinkle fries. And
yes,
whew,
my mouth is watering just thinking about that right now.
Yeah,
Precious. It is good. It's fantastic. Yep.
I love it.
It's messy, but it's good.
Yeah, exactly. That one's hard to eat in the drive-through one because you end up getting sauce all over yourself, but it tastes delicious. So awesome. Yep. Well, thank you guys for jumping on. To your listeners, guys, we know that you guys have got lots of choices on how you guys spend your time and energy. So we appreciate you guys spending time with us. Learn a little bit about what the team at Faster Lines is doing and how they've helped Zaxby's. If you haven't already subscribed, go subscribe to the newsletter as well as wherever you want to consume your content. Rob and Ben, thank you guys so much for your wisdom and hanging out with us today. And to our listeners, make it a great day.
Thanks, guys.